This is a harsh reality. Without China, our prosperity will be affected. Our standard of living will be affected for every single Australian. And that's the ripple effect.
On their way to China, what a majestic sight. Fortescue Metals Group has built 4 massive ships to export the iron ore they mine in Western Australia. When all fully loaded, they transfer 1 million tonnes every trip. The steel that Australian ore produces is driving the Chinese economy as it leads the world out of COVID recession.
The ongoing strength of China really underpins the strength of the whole iron ore export market here in Australia.
Hi, I'm Tim Harcourt, and welcome to After the Pandemic.
Out of the ground, over the sea. The iron ore in these ships has helped power the economies of 2 countries, China and Australia, during the pandemic. For Australia, it's top of the export list.
For Australia, the big export numbers to China are measured in billions. Iron ore, 63 billion Australian dollars. Natural gas, 16 billion. Coal, 14 billion. Overseas student travel, 12 billion. Agriculture, 12 billion. Telecommunications, 9 billion. Computers, 7 billion. Wine, 1.2 billion.
But it's iron ore that leads the way. And central to its continuing success in a world economy battled by COVID has been the calm leadership of Elizabeth Gaines. In 2 years at the helm, the girl from the bush, who grew up on the edge of Australia's Great Sandy Desert, has steered Fortescue Metals to become the nation's 6th biggest company.
Well, Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. It's great to be with you.
So how important is China to the success of Fortescue now and in the next 5 years?
Well, look, our relationship with China is fundamental to Fortescue's success. We've seen China continue to urbanise, and the government there have a strong commitment to lifting people out of poverty. That requires urbanisation. Urbanisation tends to be very infrastructure heavy and therefore demands steel. So that means for Fortescue as an iron ore producer, the growth and development of China has been fundamental to our success. But the ongoing strength of China really underpins the strength of the whole iron ore export market here in Australia.
There's been this clamour by certain commentators to step back from China, not have all your eggs in one basket, diversify. I mean, how feasible is that, in iron ore, given this special relationship that we have with China?
Well, it gets back to the fundamental of demand and where the demand for seaborne iron ore is, and that's actually with China. China, particularly in the last 12 months, is probably producing close to 60% of global steel, and that over 1.05 billion tonnes of steel, the next biggest producer would be about 100 million tonnes. So that clearly shows you there's a big gap between China as the largest producer of crude steel.
So demand's important. There's also supply. At the moment, Australia is a very reliable, successful supplier for China. There's often talk that China will seek supply from Brazil or Africa, Guinea, for instance. How confident do you think Australia will continue to be this premier supplier?
Well, you have to look at where we operate ourselves and the other iron ore producers here in Western Australia. We're in the Pilbara. We're an average 14-day seaborne journey to China. So our proximity, the quality of our iron ore makes us a core supplier. And we're supplying between us over 800 million tonnes of iron ore.
So you'd say that the power of proximity will defeat the tyranny of distance?
Well, look, I think having decades of those supply relationships and with a very strong engagement with our customers It's very hard to replicate over 800 million tonnes of iron ore. And I do think that there is an appreciation of the strength and security of supply. I mean, during COVID last year, the West Australian iron ore producers kept producing. We actually banded together as an industry. We were regarded as an essential service, and we were able to ensure the safety of our team members at the same time continuing to supply iron ore to our customers. So I actually think the last 12 months have actually demonstrated what an important source of supply iron ore from the Pilbara is to China.
You know, I believe your deals, the contracts you sign with China are over $4 billion worth for Australia. Do you think some of the tensions and headlines with China could adversely affect those deals that we're seeing now?
We certainly need to be mindful of the broader trading relationship between our countries, but we approach it very much on individual engagement, the strength of our underlying relationships with our core customers. But we've approached it in a very multifaceted way. Not only do we sell iron ore to our customers in China, that's obviously an important part of our business, but we also procure product from China. So part of our success has been based on the product that we've procured from China. We built our 8 large ore carriers at shipyards in China. Our second largest shareholder is a Chinese SOE steel mill, Hunan Valin. It's probably been the most successful investment by a Chinese entity outside of China is the investment that they've made in Fortescue. And we've got a number of other linkages. So it's very much a multifaceted relationship. I think that's been really important to Fortescue's success.
Going well in iron ore, as you say, with the multifaceted relationship with China. What do you think's changed overall, perhaps, you know, outside your industry between Australia and China? Because it's been quite different in the last year or so, even the last 5 years.
Well, look, I think the trading relationship between Australia and China has been built over many decades. And obviously sometimes relationships go through dips and they go through peaks. But I think underpinning that, there is a strength of an underlying trading relationship. I do actually think that there's an opportunity for some further diplomacy, ways to actually nurture and look to repair the relationship, because it has stood the test of time for a long time.
Geoffrey Blaney, the historian, once said, Australia suffers from tyranny of distance. I feel now with the Asian century, it's the power of proximity.
Oh, yeah.
It's replaced the tyranny of distance.
Absolutely. And the power of building relationships. And that's who we are.
David Koch is a man who wears many hats. He's Australia's most successful breakfast show host. He's the businessman behind the fastest growing online financial communications network in the country. And he's the proud chairman of Port Adelaide Australian Rules Football Club, whose pioneering foray into playing an annual game in China is an export success story. Apparently, it runs in the family. Now, you have a very strong family background in trading with China. Wasn't your father the first Westerner to trade coal in China?
Yeah, he was. I was only a kid at the time, and Dad was an international coal trader and traded Australian coal into China and traded Chinese coal out of China. And I remember back to those days and the stories from Dad, and he always said, you build relationships in China around trust and respect, that it's all about face, and it's about you showing them the respect that they deserve in terms of building an ongoing relationship. And he said it will end up becoming the biggest economy in the world. So we all laughed at him at the time, but he's pretty right.
He was on the money. Your family history tells you how important China is. You know, it's 8% of GDP. Our trade with China is so important. How do you think we can get across to ordinary Australians how important it is?
It is massive. It is like if you ran your own business and you had one customer account for 38% of your business, you'd think they were pretty important. And the prospect of losing that customer or losing the faith of that customer could be devastating to your business. That is China to Australia. And most Australians have no idea how big China is. It blows you away, the size of it. The population of Australia is the population of Shanghai. It is massive. And unless we treat them the way that we should treat a valued partner, then, it's the ripple effect will be huge. We had a vision to bring AFL to China.
Port Adelaide was the first sporting club in the world to organise a competitive match in China. 3 years later, in 2019, before COVID hit, the Shanghai fixture had grown into an enormous event showcasing the best of Australia. Like his father before him, David Koch pioneered a new way of doing business in China, watching the footy over a beer. You decided to take this club to China, the first Aussie rules club to play for premiership points. What was your strategy behind taking Port to China?
First sporting club, professional sporting club in the world to play in China for competition points. Everyone else goes and plays invitational games and friendlies, and we now play a game in Shanghai every year. It wasn't part of the original plan, but it's a way of showing respect to our Chinese partners and saying we're committed for the long term. My view was Port Adelaide, to differentiate ourselves from the other 17 AFL clubs and build a strong alternative revenue stream, was going to become the AFL's international and trade club. And China being our biggest trading partner was the obvious first choice. As I say to people, Port Adelaide is to Australia what the Bolshoi Ballet is to Russia.
Not many ballet dancers out of Port Adelaide.
Not famous for our cultural side, but anyhow. But you can use sports diplomacy to build so many bridges. So a lot of the AFL traditionalists said, AFL will never be big in China. Well, we're not stupid. But using AFL to build cultural and business and trade ties can be really powerful. And that's basically our focus. It's bringing people together to make them feel comfortable and sharing each other's values through sport or culture or whatever. And that's important, and boy, it will be even more important over the next couple of years when we can start to travel again.
David Koch and Elizabeth Gaines, two smart business brains doing very contrasting jobs on opposite ends of Australia's vast continent. But very close in their shared view that there is cause for optimism about the future.
And I think most importantly, as we transition out of this COVID environment, the opportunities for further investment in resources and in energy projects and renewable energy is significant, and that'll really underpin the future strength of the Australian economy. And it's not just about mining, this is about investment in innovation, in autonomy. It creates new skills, it provides opportunity for people who might have been impacted by COVID in terms of long-term prospects for employment. Those people can actually have the opportunity to retrain for a role in the resources sector.
The man who built the company Elizabeth now runs is Dr. Andrew Forrest. Selling iron ore to China made him one of Australia's richest men, and he now sees an opportunity for both countries to lead the world in tackling climate change.
This lecture is about what I'm doing to fight climate change under the premise that actions speak louder than words.
You and Dr. Forrest have talked a lot about the importance of climate change and the transition. How are you leading the transition to clean energy at Fortescue, and what role does China play in that transition towards renewable energy?
Well, I think in the context of what we're doing, we've made a commitment to decarbonise our existing operations, and we're investing in that. We're investing in large-scale solar energy across our existing operations in the Pilbara. And if you think about it, you look at China's push to also reduce emissions and to be net zero emissions by 2060, I think China will be a quiet achiever and will actually accelerate at a faster pace. If we can produce an iron ore product that is actually free from emissions, so it's a green iron ore product, that will contribute significantly to the decarbonisation agenda in China. So I actually think we're working together, and we will contribute to that overall climate change and emissions reduction agenda, both here in Australia and in China.
For Australia, putting the green into the green and gold will bring potentially enormous rewards via our biggest trading partner.
We're seen as a healthy nation, a clean environment. We're an aspirational country and community to the average Chinese, and that's worth bottling. I don't think, as a country, we've leveraged that enough.
Yeah, we've had the mining boom with China, and of course there's incredible demand for consumer products, the green revolution,
Yep.
and services.
Absolutely, and it's all set out in their 5-year plans. I remember I was at a conference in Shanghai, and a wonderful speaker, lady up there, Australian lady who had a business up there for 15 years, 20 years, and hand goes up from the audience. How do you know what the Chinese are thinking? How do you know what they're going to be doing? What are the opportunities in the future? And she said, read the 5-year plan. And every 5 years, they put out their strategic plan and they stick to it. And they always deliver on it. So everyone thinks China is shrouded in secrecy. What are they going to do next? Well, they're very open about where they're going to take the economy, and they do it in a big way. My point is, it's not a matter of agreeing everything with China. It's being able to express, even from a value and community point of view on particular issues, as well as trade, but doing it in a way that's constructive and respectful. We have a wonderful society. The pandemic has shown that. When we go through hardship in this country, the community comes together in an unbelievable fashion, whereas other countries, the pandemic's gone through and torn them apart. And those characteristics that we have hold us in such good stead in Asia and non-European markets, which is why I'm really surprised at how we treated China. Our DNA is be respectful, and we have an enormous sense of fairness.
In Australian rules football, the umpires would put it this way: it's about both sides playing hard, but also playing fair. Port Adelaide on the up, but the Australia-China relationship, your other passion, not so good now. Do you think basically we were too macho, trying to go it alone, making all these decisions? What's your take on it?
I've been very upfront. The Prime Minister knows my views, the Treasurer knows my views, the Trade Minister. But I think they've just been naive in terms of building a relationship with China, not understanding the cultural differences, that words are really powerful in China. You know, a bunch of Aussies, we can slag each other off and then have a beer after. Well, China, words stick. Words are analysed. Words stay with people for a long time. That real saving face, that respect, that trust can be broken by untimely and unseemly words.
If the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, or the new Trade Minister, Dan Tehan, said to you, listen, Kochie, we need they're not picking up the phone, we need to organise a new trade mission to China to get this back on the road, would you lead it? Would you be part of it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And just finally, without thinking up too much doom and gloom, but let's say things are still tense with China for a little while longer, and the Prime Minister wants to have a reset of our relationship and announces a big trade mission. Would you lead it or participate in it if that was the thing we needed to do to get China relations back on track?
Absolutely. I think if there was a trade initiative to visit China with business leaders from Australia, I'd be absolutely putting my hand up to be part of that.
And what do you think the message should be to the Chinese when we're sitting around that table?
Well, I think I'd focus on the strength of those trading relationships that have been built over decades. These are not short-term relationships. This is a long-term relationship. There is security of supply from Australia. We've demonstrated that for the last 12 months. And it's an important bilateral relationship. As I said, not only do we sell product, we procure product from China as well.
Okay, Elizabeth, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Appreciate your interest in Fortescue.
David Koch, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Tim.
Perfect. Nice and optimistic too, David.
Oh, yeah. I'm a bit of a supreme optimist, but
That's good. That's good.